Welcome to the Hunting Beast Podcast, your source for hunting tactics, news, and stories. And now your host, Mario Traficante.
All right, I think we're good.
All right.
All right. So we're back at it. I'm here with the Hunting Beast Podcast, talking to Big Hunt on the Hunting Beast site, Tyler Whitt. He's here today to share some of his tactics and good stories and techniques for chasing after turkeys in the spring. Tyler, how are you doing?
No, pretty good. Just
So you're telling
morning scouting.
Yeah, you're telling me you're out scouting this morning. So what are you looking for? Besides the obvious of turkeys.
Trying to locate some flocks that I've been seeing, throughout the winter. I've been actually eyeing them up since last fall. They pretty much stay in the same areas. But like new areas, like when I go to a new area or something like that, I'm looking for lots of diverse terrain, such as like creeks and rivers or hills, over a swamp. Different habitat like vegetation, because they like when they're feeding, they like to browse on buds and little bugs and worms, and stuff like that. And then also nesting purposes, they need the hens, they need that right nesting vegetation. I just don't think they just go put their nests anywhere. It's got to be, I found a couple hen nests, and when I do, it's pretty much the same. I don't know what plant it is, but they like like on the edge of a barbed wire fence, like the grass there.
Yeah, like a fence row. Yep.
Right. They like to nest right there because of the grass. It's pretty soft, number one, and then for the most part, it's super thick in there. But I almost never find a hen nest like in the middle of the woods. So I don't know about you, but for the most part, it's.
I've typically found nests in areas that you're describing, so taller grass, but on field edges, on transitions like that, but not in the middle of timber. At least that's been my experience. It's always been in.
Yeah, thinking back, I don't think I have ever found a hen nest in the middle of the woods. It's always usually right on the edge of the field. So either the hen can fly up in the tree, or most of the time they're going to be sitting on the nest even at night. I mean, I've seen that actually walking in early in the morning, trying to get, right underneath some toms, and here I kick a hen off at the base of this tree, and it turns out she was sitting on her nest. It was in pitch black, so that was a weird encounter.
I think that probably has a lot to do with obviously the
incubation
type of grasses, and the things that are in that spot. They're probably getting sunlight to heat those eggs definitely as well. So I bet the proximity is. Yeah, it's probably in relation to the sunlight that's hitting the nest, and then from a protection standpoint, they're probably looking to use their eyesight to obviously see predators coming from a greater distance away. But
the only downfall of that is turkeys are so dumb, they don't know that predators like coyotes and foxes, they like running the fence lines and stuff. So, in a way, it's kind of it's a good, but it's bad. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
They really got to be there to be protecting them. So,
in some of these areas that have multiple types, if you've got creek bottoms and you've got hill country, then you've got CRP fields, and if it's spread out over a wider area, typically the fence rows or those transitions are where the thickest cover is. So we've seen deer bed there, and turkey are no different, I think. And that's probably why the predators are there, because they're cruising through those areas where there's bedding or where there's secure cover.
Yeah, no doubt. But yeah, I mean, another thing is wherever there's water, there seems to be turkeys. I don't know if it's because they want it in the evening and morning to drink, or if it's security. You know, like you can hear predators underneath you sloshing around, a deer, or a coyote, or a human, or whatever comes in. I don't know what it is, but they're most where I hunt here in the Kettle Moraine. I hunt the Kettle Moraine. It's about 30,000 acres, and most of the flocks that I have located through the years, their primary roosting is like right over a creek, or they got kettles here. It's a Kettle Moraine, so those kettles, they're big holes. They fill up with water, and it's almost like a small lake in the middle of the woods. A lot of times they'll be roosted right over those. I call them kettle holes or kettle lakes or whatever.
Right.
A lot of times they're there. But or a swamp, you know, they have a lot of swamps. A lot of times they're right over that water in the swamp. I don't know what it is, but same with hill country. There's not a lot of water in hill country. If you find like a pond or a river up high, or like where the ridges, you know, like where there's a valley and there's a cut or whatever where the water's rushing down and there's a creek down there, that's probably going to be turkeys around there. They got to have some sort of water, so they're going to be in the vicinity of that. If there's not a lot of water around, they're probably, if you do see them in that area, they're probably traveling to that area. They're not roosting around there.
That makes sense. And there's probably a bigger diversity of just plant life as well as insects and bugs and other things that they can feed on in those areas. So there's probably multiple reasons why they like going in there.
Mm-hmm. Agreed.
So you said you hunt the Kettle Moraine and you got about 30,000 acres to work with. Your travels on these scouting trips. So are you in your truck? Are you on foot? And how are you keeping track of what you see?
Well, I put on, most of the time I'm driving around. Like last year, I put on about 10,000 miles, so that's in 2 months. So that's probably, 3 oil changes, something like that.
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah, that's a lot of driving. I mean, that's going out in the evening, roosting, midday looking, in the morning listening, mid-morning. You know, I'm driving, just constantly driving, checking. And what I do is I use Google Earth, and there's options. You can drop a pin on there, like different colors, and you can edit those pins. I put the time, like if I hear him on the roost, I'll say Gobbler or Tom Roost, the date, the time, you know, or if it's like mid-morning and I see him in a field, I'll drop a pin in the field and I'll, you know, just say Tom spotted or whatever, and the time and the date. And also I do the color coding thing. I like to use red pins in March, green in April, and like orange or whatever in May, you know. And if you watch those pins where the flocks are, they start to move from pressure. And every month they'll move a little bit, but for the most part, they're all in the same area. Because a lot of things change. Mushrooms start popping up mid-May, or depending on the spring, how warm, how fast it gets.
Right.
But
right.
you got mushroom hunters, then you start getting hikers, then you get horseback riders, and then you just get hunters, you know. And when that starts happening, the birds, they really start to change up where they're at. And then it becomes a little more sporadic, and then they tend to go deeper. You know, like a lot of the road birds, they get shot right away. The birds that are right by the road. I mean, those are the ones that a lot of guys, they just road hunt in their truck. They just get out and they listen. Most of the time, there's turkeys deep in there. You can't even hear from the road. You got to get out and walk a couple hundred yards before you even faintly even hear a gobble. You know what I mean? So
right.
a lot of hunters are missing out on that, and that's where I capitalize on those deep spots.
So that's pretty good info about using Google Maps. So you can pretty much go home on your computer, zoom out on the map, and get a pretty good idea where multiple flocks are working certain areas and how they're transitioning over time. So depending on the month, you can look back historically where you've seen birds back. I mean, how many years worth of data you think you got collected in something like that?
Oh man, let's see here. I started hunting the kettle back in 2010, I think.
Okay.
So about 8 years, 9 years. This will be the 9th year, you know. So
Nice.
I don't know. At first, it was a little Well, actually, I mushroom hunted a lot before I started hunting the kettle. So
Yeah.
I knew every time I went out in the morning, I was just like, oh, man, there's a gobbler. Oh, there's another one. They were just surrounding me all the time. It ate away at me, honestly, for the longest time. And then, because I always hunted in western Wisconsin on the public and the private over there on my
Right,
grandpa's.
right.
But I was like, you know what? I'm gonna pick me up an extra tag. And there were so many times out mushroom hunting where I just called them in. I brought a call with, and boom, they came right in. I'm like, this is so easy. I could be getting, many turkeys every year. And I just started doing that. I started picking up extra tags, and I'd get like the fourth season and the fifth season. But now I'm usually doing the fifth and the sixth because I like to hunt later around here. It's really good hunting the fifth and sixth in the kettle. Most of the time, everybody's thinking fishing. And let's see, Memorial Weekend is in spring, right? Yeah, Memorial Weekend.
Yep. That's the weekend I
April.
actually have my tag.
Oh, nice.
One of my
Yeah.
tags.
Most of people, they're in camping mode. They're in summer mode. They're in fishing mode. In the woods, it's pretty vacant of hunters. You'd be surprised. The fifth and sixth season, you'll have the woods to yourself. It's pretty nice.
Yeah.
For the most part. I mean, you drive around in the first, second, third season, there's a truck every half mile. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So.
Well, that's kind of good information on being able to work around pressure, right? Because
Right.
a lot of these areas are getting a lot of hunting pressure. So
Yeah, part of that too is the early bird gets the worm. Obviously, you're not the only guy hearing the turkeys gobbling. You're not the only one seeing them. But if you're there first in the morning, 99% of the guys have respect and they'll go on. But every once in a while, there's those jerks. They just come in and they think they own everything, and I don't know. It is what it is. I've had some pretty weird encounters. I had this guy come in on our decoys, and he obviously thought that my decoy, was a real turkey because he shot at it.
oh boy.
Yeah, I stood up
Yeah.
and I started yelling at him, and the look on his face was like he couldn't believe it. Long story short, he was out of there real quick. He felt real bad, And then there was another time I was hunting. There was this flock out in the field, and I snuck around on them, and obviously you can see him from the road. So I saw the car drive by and slow down. I'm thinking, oh boy, here we go. He's gonna get out. He's probably gonna park right by me, get out and come walking over here. Sure enough, I'm sitting there. Here comes the flock. All of a sudden I realize, okay, I can hear somebody coming. I looked, and here come the hunters. They don't even see me. They're right behind me, and the flock is directly in front of, I'm in between them and the flock. I'm in between them and the flock.
Well, that's not a good situation.
Yeah, no. So all of a sudden, I swear, he rose his gun. I stood up. I'm like, what are you doing? And the look on his face is priceless. I'm like, I bet you're parked right behind me, too. And the look on his face, he just didn't know what to say. And I told him, I was like, why would you park? Why would you even think about parking right behind me, knowing there's a truck here, seeing the turkeys in the field? Don't you think that maybe I'm on them, too? And he just looked at me like, oh man, I was pretty upset. But yeah, there's a lot of stupidity out there. You really got to be careful. I mean, there's a good chance he didn't even see me. I even said, I was like, you could have shot right over my head at these turkeys in the field. And he had a little guy with him, probably 13, 14 years old. And I'm just thinking, oh man, that's a real good example to be setting for him,
Yeah, I think a lot of people that, they get into those situations, and he probably didn't even realize the gravity of what he was doing, right? But it does bring up a good point about what you're saying. If you're hunting across these different public areas and you're in an expanded area, you're going to come across other hunters. You're going to come across hikers, horseback riders, people out mushroom picking, and you have to be able to adjust your setup. And in a situation like that, I mean, both these situations you talked about, I think, you did the right thing where you made your presence known, before it was too late, before, someone accidentally shot in your direction. But yeah, that's part of it. So back into the scouting thing. So you went out this morning, you scouted, you're starting to locate these flocks, you're marking them. As you start drawing closer to the season, what do you start doing then as far as locating those specific toms you want to hunt, or maybe getting closer to where they roost? What are some things that you do in that regards?
Well, by then, when it's like a week before season, by then I'm pretty much locked on them. I mean, I know pretty much where they're at. Like I said, they pretty much stay in the same area unless they get bumped.
So are you
But
talking an area of like 10 miles or 5 miles, 1 mile? What have you seen as far as the flocks that you're tracking? Do they?
is you're talking like their home range?
Yeah, kind of like their home range. Do they? I
I
mean,
would say their home range is probably like 1 to 3 miles. I
Yeah.
don't see them really travel. They pretty much, actually, you would be surprised on how close they stay to their roost areas. Like, you'll be in there in the morning and you'll hear them move off, right? And you're thinking, okay, they're going to the next county over or whatever. But no, you'll come back at noon. Like, you'll want to go check out the roost area. And all of a sudden, you'll go in there and boom, you'll kick them out. They don't really go far from the roost at all.
the roosting area.
Yeah. Like noon, 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock. By then, I don't know. I see them work a circle pattern. I don't know what you see, but I've noticed that they'll like fly down and they'll be here. And then all of a sudden, a couple hours later, they'll be over here, and it's almost like a circle they're making all the way back to the roost. Or a lot of times I see it where they fly down, they go to a particular food source, they're there all day, and then they come straight back. It's like a line. I've seen that too. So
Yeah, I think I've observed both types of situations like that where they circle. I know a couple properties I used to hunt where it's more hilly type country. There were sections of oak trees on these ridges that they like
mhm.
to roost in. And I don't, there's probably a variety of reasons for that, but one of which these larger oak trees had these huge long branches with a ton of cover, but they were always sitting up over a ridge point. But you'd see them get down and they'd literally make these giant loops through the surrounding property. And then I've even seen them a couple times sort of traverse across the same path to get back to that roosting tree in the evening. So yeah, I've kind of observed that same thing.
Right.
So back to roosting. So let's say you've identified kind of an area where you believe they're going back to roost. What's your tactics in the morning and in the evening? I mean, how are you getting closer, or what else are you looking for to get set up for that hunt on them?
In the morning, I'll sit back because I don't want to bust them, So I'll just sit back and I'll listen, and visually, if I can see them, good. If not, it's not a big deal because you can hear the gobbling and what direction they go in and the yelping and stuff. So in the morning, I'll sit back and I'll be like, okay, a couple days in a row, they're gobbling there, And then in the evening, especially when it gets closer to season, I'll start picking my turkeys. Like, okay, this he's pretty huntable. He's been within the same trees the past 7 days, And this flock over here, they're not as consistent. So I won't even worry about that one. That'll be like a backup one. I mainly focus on those toms that are always consistently in an area because those are your best chances. The ones that are just more random, you're going to be hunting a lot harder for them because they could be roosting in a tree one night in a certain area, and all of a sudden you go there the next day and they're 400 yards down the same ridge, but it's just a different tree.
So are you calling in the morning when you go in to try to, I guess, get eyes on them? You don't call.
I don't call because number one, they hear that and it's a different, it's not a real hen, and there's a lot of guys out there that just buy calls from the store like Fleeting Farm or Cabela's or whatever, and those calls they get bought and used. Thousands of guys use them, so the turkeys hear them all the time, right? Now you start getting into those custom calls, that's when you're going to start getting some good responses because they never heard those before, the custom calls. There's different frequencies and tones and pitches. Most of those calls that are bought from the store, almost every hunter has at least one of those calls, you know what I'm saying?
Oh,
Like
yeah.
a HS Rod or a Mad call, you know.
I have a
Drury
couple
Outdoors.
different ones. Yeah, exactly.
Right,
Yeah.
right. I mean, you start getting into those custom calls, now you're going to start getting some good responses because they haven't heard those calls before. But typically I don't call like in the morning because I don't want them to I don't want them to know that I'm over there, basically. It's good enough for me just to hear them. That's all I need to know. Then I'll come back in the evening, and that's when I'll start hooting at them. Like, okay, I heard them over here in the morning. They're most likely going to be in this general vicinity. And if you get up high where you can get the sound of the owl hooter, like out, like get up on a ridge and where it goes down into a gradual slope. There's a lot of that in the kettle. There's a lot of ridges. That sound carries out more versus if you're down in the valley and you're calling up, it kind of just muffles. I don't know. It's hard to explain, I guess. But I always try to get to the highest point, like on the road or up on a ridge or something, so the calling really goes out there. And you can literally hear it skip over the treetops on a dead quiet night.
Yeah, if no one's heard it, I mean, Tyler recently posted a video of him doing this owl calling back against the turkeys, and it's pretty cool. So are you going out like right at dusk or when?
Oh, that's a good question. For roosting, most guys, they're roosting at the wrong time. They'll go out like right when the sun's going down. They're thinking, okay, the turkeys are in the tree already. But 9 times out of the 10, they're not in the tree yet. That's why they haven't gobbled back to them. They really, from what I see, they don't gobble. They will gobble if they're hot, But when they get up in the tree, that's when they start gobbling. And the perfect time to match it is in the morning, right as you hear that first gobble, right at daybreak, like gray light. If you can match that in the evening, that's the best time to roost. Wait. It's going to be hard to do it, but you're going to be like, I feel stupid sitting. It's almost dark, And a lot of guys, when I'm out roosting, I see nobody out there, Mario. Nobody. It's amazing. And I'm out there, I'm hooting. Oh, there's 3 of them right there. I jump in my truck. I fly down the road to the next spot, hoot a couple more times. Oh, there's another one. Fly down to the next spot. Oh, there's another one. It's just how it goes. You just keep hitting those spots. It's all timing on the roosting. Actually, I have 2 owl hooters here. I can show you kind of like how I hit them if you want.
Yeah, for sure. Why don't we do that? That'd be cool.
I mean, I'm not sure. It should pick it up pretty good.
Oh yeah.
But like, I have 5 or 6 different hooters. They're all different tones and frequencies. And you can go down the line. If one doesn't work, just go to the next one. They're either gonna like a high pitched one or a low pitched one. And sooner or later, just keep hooting. They ain't going to gobble right away, but for the most part, within 4 or 5 hoots, they gobble. So, but this is pretty much how I hit them. Hold on a minute. I'll just, I'll sneak in and then I'll just go like this. It's like that, and I'll just wait. And usually they gobble right there. They'll throw a gobble out.
Right.
And if they don't, well, then I'll go like this. And then that's like, because it's like, there's a series of the call.
Right.
And then if they don't call, then I'll hit them with the full hoot. Kind of like that. And then if that don't do it, well, then I can either go to another owl hooter, like this lower tone one. I don't know if you can tell the difference. Yeah, that sounds pretty low tone compared to the other one.
Yeah, there's a slightly different tone to that. Oh yeah.
So, I mean, most of the time they're gobbling, but that's kind of like what I do. I'll start off soft. You don't want to be blasting at them, just kind of just. I kind of do that, or just I'll do that too. That'll get them fired up. I don't know if you listen to owls a lot or not, but I really pay attention to how owls call in the morning or at night, and what calls get them to gobble. And for the most part, it's either one of these, something like that, or that's pretty much all you need, and they're gobbling. I mean, and then, I got this little brass whistle. I was telling Dan about this. Dan knows. I think I told you about this too.
Yeah.
But I found it in my grandma's old sewing box, and I remember when I was a kid, I was watching Drewy Outdoors. It was called King of Spring. I'm pretty sure it was one of their very first turkey hunting VHS tapes. And now I forgot what hunter it was, but he had this brass whistle on there. It's a really high-pitched whistle. And when he blew it, when they were roosting at night, he would blow that, and the turkeys would gobble. So it's like a high-pitched frequency that strikes them, and it makes them gobble. That's one of my secret weapons. I'll go down all my owl hooters. I'll use the coyote howler. I'll pull that whistle out. That'll get them. I don't know what it is about it, but it just gets them.
Can you hear that? It's probably like a brass dog whistle, I suppose, huh? Can you hear it?
Let's see. That's down in the garage. I can go get it.
Oh, no, that's all right. I'm just curious if it's probably.
Exactly what it is.
Yeah.
But
so one thing that I wanted to highlight for the people listening is that when you said if you can match in the morning,
right.
their activity with matching in the evening, I mean, you're talking about the amount of daylight for when they first start being audible. So if you can match that same amount of daylight in the evening is when they first started being audible in the morning, that's when you're going to get your most success in locating the roost.
Right. And a good thing is the daylight will help you. If you can see the sun and you watch it go down below the horizon, as soon as it goes down below the horizon, now you can start counting down. Like I have it timed out almost to a T now that I've been hunting around here. In early season, like first, second season, the prime time roosting is about 7:50 p.m. And that's when I want to start calling, because it's like 20 to 30 minutes before complete black. You know
Right.
what I'm saying?
Yep.
Yeah. So, and then as the season goes on, obviously daylight is longer, and in the morning too, it gets lighter earlier because the summer and stuff. Because let's see, in the first season, I'm most of the time I'm killing them about 5:45, and by the time sixth season comes, I'm telling you, it's like 4:45. It's pretty early when they drop out of the trees. That's just the difference in the time from when the first season starts to the last season.
Right.
You really got to work with the daylight.
Yeah, that's interesting, and that they're tracking on that specifically.
Right.
So
the roosting, though, that's what most guys mess up on, is they roost way too early. They got to be in there right before dark. They got to be. And Predator TC came with me a couple times, and he gets the idea of it, but it was all timing. You really got to get in there a little later. That's all it was for him, was just being a little later. And then now he gets in there and he's roosting them. So
once you determine the roost and you're roosting them in the evening, what else do you do to start determining their direction of travel? Like obviously when you want to hunt them, you have to get in on a setup. So what strategies do you use to start determining what your setup's going to be once you've identified your birds? Like you said, you start locking down on specific birds, you're finding out where they roost. Are you using your morning observations to determine direction? I guess, what are you doing there?
yeah, basically I'm just falling back on my morning scouting, knowing, because you can sit back and listen. Okay, the gobbling's going to the north, or it's going east, or he's going west. For the most part, they keep that pattern unless they get bumped or something like that. So in the morning, I you listen to that, and then okay, he's been going to the north the past 3 days, so the chances are he's probably going to go to the north tomorrow, like when you're set up on him. So you kind of dictate that in with your setup.
You're really observing from a distance to see what direction they're going to. Now, are you setting up, in your situations, you talked about these being creek bottoms, cattle country where you've got hills or sections of water, or you're in thicker timber. So, I mean, are these birds flying a long distance when they get down? Are they pitching straight down to the bottom of the tree? Are you trying to get on the other side of them, or what are your setups looking like from that perspective?
It depends on where they're at. If they're on a ridge, like if it's a big open, flat ridge that comes down to a point, they're probably going to be down on the end of that point, kind of like a buck, but not in the wind-wise. They'll just be down there because they like to be down at that narrowest point to where they can see, you know what I mean? Like as it gradually funnels out the top of the ridge. They like to either pitch down on top of the ridge so they can strut and be seen by the hens, or they're going to pitch straight down below the tree, or a lot of times they'll go down into if there's not a lot of water down, depending on how close the water is to the ridge, they'll pitch down into the valley and then work their way up. I've seen that. But a lot of times if you're by a field, though, if they're within 300 yards from a field, they're probably going to pitch down and go towards the field or pitch out into the field, like fly directly to the field so they can be seen or start feeding, stuff like that.
That makes sense.
Yeah. Trying to think that there was a couple instances set up. My one buddy, we had 5 toms. They were roosted up there right on the edge of the field, and he wanted to get right underneath them. And I just kept telling him, I was like, dude, they're gonna come to the field. So we set up to the field anyways, and they walked right past us. He got the shot off, and we were right on top of them. They were literally 30 yards behind us. So why even go in the woods?
So I guess how close in proximity to where you're getting them roosted are you putting your decoys and positioning yourself? And we're talking like 200 yards, 75 yards, 50 yards.
Way closer than that.
Oh yeah.
I get in. I'll go. Oh yeah. I get in there the night before and I roost them. Most guys they'll be satisfied. We're like, okay, I can hear them. They'll be from their truck and be like, he's on that ridge, probably about right there, maybe right there. But they have a good idea, right? Not me. I go in there and I pinpoint that tree. So because I want to be as accurate as possible in the morning, I'll pinpoint it and I'll walk into the dark and get right underneath them. And when I say right underneath them, I'm talking like 30 yards. You can almost blast them from the tree. If you were with me last year on that hunt there in the 5th season, I walked in under those turkeys. I don't know how they didn't see me, but there was 5 of them right above me. Literally in the tree I sat against.
Wow.
But I get real close. The closer you get, I think the better. Personally, I've heard a lot of different, opinions on it, but yeah, occasionally they'll fly out of the tree right over the top of you, like, and go to the field. But in most of those situations by the field, I'm set up in the field anyways. I don't want to be right underneath them because more times than not, they're going to pitch down to that field or go to the field anyways to feed or strut. But if you're deep in the timber, I like to get right underneath them because they're either going to drop straight down or up on that ridge or, they don't go far from the roost. And I get those decoys I don't put them straight out in front of me in case they drop down because then they're looking past the decoy straight on right at you.
Okay.
I kind of try to put them off to the left or the right or whatever. You know what I mean? Kind of, you don't want to make too much movement. Believe it or not, I've had turkeys bust me in pitch black. There's pros and cons getting that close. Yeah, the pros is you're getting close. You're going to be right on top of them. There's probably a 90% chance you're going to kill him when he wakes up and he looks down, and only 20 yards away there's a decoy sitting there. You know what I mean? They get a little excited. But
yeah, you're setting up kind of perpendicular to where those decoys are, and I guess that's another So you're going in complete darkness, though. Let's make no mistake,
Yeah.
because I would imagine if you were using a headlamp, they would see you and fly off
Oh,
from
yeah.
their roost. They're pretty far away.
Right. And the night before you do that, you trail, and like that brings up another good point is like the week before this, like the week before the hunt, I know I'm hunting certain birds, so I'll actually go in there to the roost area and be like, all right, when I come in, which is most likely like the highest probability areas I'm gonna hunt, I'm gonna go in there and be like, okay, you can see where the scat is laying on the ground from where they roost in the trees. There's this turkey scat all over the ground. There's gonna be feathers in there all over because they pluck their feathers out at night, like when they're grooming themselves, and then when they fly up into the trees, a lot of times the feathers will get ripped out. So there's gonna be a lot of feathers and scat like right at
So
the roosting tree.
wow, that's interesting. Have you
Right.
found like during day scouting where you'll go and seek out these
Oh,
roosting trees, or is it
yeah.
because of that? Okay.
For sure. Another thing you notice is a lot of scratching on the ground right by these trees where they're spending time. They fly down or right before they fly up, they're scratching and looking for acorns, bugs, whatever they're feeding on. But there's always a lot of feathers, like wing feathers, tail feathers, and lots of scat. And when I mean that, it's going to be within like a 10-foot radius because they're always up in the one, like right in the perfect branch or whatever. They're going to be pooping all night, so it's going to be right there, on the bottom of the forest floor there. It's pretty easy to spot. And then
Yeah.
it's like, okay, this is obviously a roost tree or the close to the roost area. And then you can just start walking around it and be like, okay, how can I get in here quietly without breaking branches? And if you can't, that's when you start snapping some dead branches to kind of make a trail. You can't really cut branches on public, but I just kind of snap dead ones and kind of just push stuff to the side and kind of clear some leaves a little bit, a little bit. And yeah, I mean, it's all kind of, it's preparation a little, on some of those better spots. You go in there the week before, you try not to get busted. That's what I'm saying. You go in there like noon, 1 o'clock, and all of a sudden you bust them out. For the most part, the turkeys pretty much stay around their roost area. You'd be surprised.
So those
Kinda
areas
gotta
are they're pretty
mode.
sensitive. You gotta be careful about how
Right.
you go in and out of there.
hmm I
That's
really
really
don't
good.
disturb anything. I just kind of just what I do is I find where I can enter in the quietest, quickest, and like for that setup without having anything in my way, or I don't like going through a lot of sticks or breaking sticks, or like in pine woods where they log them off. You know what I'm saying? And they leave all the treetops there. There's a
Right.
lot of that kettle. It's a nightmare to get through that stuff. If
Yeah.
you don't know that's there and you go there the next morning, oh my God, it's a nightmare. You might as well just go back to the truck because they're gonna hear you coming. You're snapping sticks and it gets bad. So really, it's the week before the hunt. I go in there and I'm mapping all my ways in and out. Mainly my ways in. Going out doesn't matter, but I want to be as quiet as possible. And that's another thing. That night before the hunt is I'll get in there, and that's another thing I'm doing. Not only am I locating the turkey in the tree, but I'm locating my way in there quietly. I can visually still see in daylight. Okay, like there's some logs over there. It's kind of open right here, so you may fly down right there. It's a little thicker right here, so I don't want to come fumbling through here and 2 hours before daylight, make a bunch of noise. I might as well stay on this path, stuff like that. You can
Right.
dictate all this stuff and kind of make up your mind the night before, so the next morning when you go in there, you stick to the plan and you go right to it, and yeah, stuff like that.
Are you mainly doing setups when you get in this situation, and I presume you are, where you're finding cover that's on the ground, where you're located? I mean, you're not hiking a blind in for these setups, are you?
I only use a blind if I'm with somebody and if it's raining. Because when it's raining in the morning, obviously nobody wants to sit there in the rain and get miserable.
Right.
But I will set up a blind, like, because the rain will cover up the sound. They don't hear you. And nobody wants to sit in the rain. But most of the time on my fire trucks, I really don't even hunt out of a blind. That's like the only time. Because if I'm with somebody, for a morning hunt in the rain. That would be the only time I use a blind. But for the most part, I'm out in the open. Cover doesn't matter for me. I'll sit up against a 1-inch tree if I have to. Just don't move. I use Predator camo. I know a lot of people, they get pretty technical with stuff, like with this new age camo or whatever, but I just that Predator camo. You can even ask the Predator TC, and he actually switched to it recently. The stuff just blends in. I mean, it breaks up your outline like crazy. And turkeys, they get right on you. They don't even see you. It's nuts.
Are you? I'm assuming you're probably are you covering your eyes and your face in these situations too?
Actually, to be honest with you, no, I'm not. I have a big red beard. And most of the time during turkey hunting, it's pretty full, and I don't use a mask. I mean, you can ask a couple of my friends.
Maybe that's your hidden secret. You have a big red beard. They're actually coming towards you to fight.
That could be. Maybe they think I'm a long beard. Old black beard meets red beard. No. But yeah, I mean, I don't. I keep my hat low. Most of the time I'll have my gun up, and well, I guess I can't say I don't use a mask. I do sometimes, like in early season when it's real brown because your face is white, But when it comes to late May, when it starts greening up, I don't even wear a mask. It's really not even worth it, because by the time the turkeys they pop out of the bushes, like it's super thick in the deep woods there, and they see you, or they don't see you, but they see your setup, and they'll be coming in, but it's so thick when they pop out, half the time they're 25 yards away the first time you see them. You just hear them coming, and by then you already got your gun on them, you're ready, so it's all over. You know what I mean? There are some solutions, I guess, though.
Yeah. What type of decoy combinations do you use? Do you just mainly hunt with a hen? Do you have a tom or a jake, or what's your preferred combination?
Yeah, I have a hen. I use DSD decoys, Dave Smith. They're pretty expensive, but they're the most realistic. And I don't know, I've seen some god-awful decoys. I've seen some, they work, but when I switched to these ones, it was like night and day difference. They come running right in. I use a hen, like a feeding hen or a stationary hen. And then I also have a jake decoy. That seems to work the best, the jake. You don't even really need the hen, because most of the time they come in to fight that jake, even in late season. But I'll find, though, if a tom is really weary, he won't even come into the jake. What you need is like 2 hens to keep them, these 2 feeding hens that look relaxed or whatever.
Right.
And less calling as possible. It's really tricky to get them. And it really, the late season around here, 5th and 6th season, it really starts getting good, because everybody that's Memorial Weekend, so they're in camping mode, they're in fishing mode, it's starting to get into the summer, so they're all thinking all summer stuff, and you would be surprised at how many hunters there's not in the woods. Like, the woods is pretty much vacant. You go around during the first 3 seasons, there's a truck every half mile in the public around here. You get into the 5th and the 6th season, you'll be lucky to see 2 hunters all day parked. So, I mean, in the early season, you kind of got to be early bird gets the worm. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
You're there first. A lot of times, most of the time, most hunters will have respect and they'll move on and they'll go on to the next spot. But I ran into some pretty crazy stuff. So.
I do have to admit, I think I might have on a couple occasions, due to not having any decoys, just tried to take a black garbage bag, and just make a decoy, just for purposes when I was younger. I did have, I'd have turkeys come and look at it from, you'd call and get them to come across it, but they would never come into it, like from across the field. Obviously, they probably knew it was a garbage bag just blowing in the wind at that point, but
It's actually not a bad idea.
for a cheap decoy, you can make it
Right.
work.
Oh,
So, on that same note of decoys, have you have you tried fanning or used turkey fans as part of your setup as well?
Oh yeah, definitely like midday. If I see a tom out in the middle of a field or with hens and you're calling to him and he ain't paying attention to you, and a lot of times I actually have this umbrella. The trick with the fans though, like the real fans, is you got to get extremely low because a turkey isn't 4 feet high. You know what I mean? Maybe if they got their head straight up and looking, but when they're
Right.
fanned out, they're pretty small birds. You'd be surprised. But you just got to get low. And another thing is to have like a hill. If you have a hill and you come up over the top, that's your best bet. Like surprise them that way. But if you have like a long distance where they can see you coming, they have a lot of time to think about what's coming at them. And I have this umbrella. I was talking to you about it before. It's got a big tom on there. When you open it up, it's made for like 2 people. It's really big. It's really nice. You can kneel down. You can put a phone on there to record. It's got like a bow mount on there. It's like on an umbrella thing, so it's got a handle. And when you're sneaking, it's really handy. I love it. If you hunt with me, we'll try it out.
All right. All right. And I suppose the same situation like you had talked about before with when you're in public areas and you're moving around with different pressure in that area of other hunters and so forth. I would assume when you're fanning, you probably got to take quite a bit of precautions to make sure that you're the only ones in an area.
For sure. I mean, I definitely won't do it if I see another truck parked because he's most likely watching the same turkey, and you just don't want to get shot, period.
Yep. Oh yeah. No, that doesn't make for a good outing if that happens.
Right. No. I mean, I ran into some pretty stupid hunters. For instance, I had this flock of turkeys out in this field, and I park on the road out of sight, and I sneak down the field edge, and I'm sitting there, and I see this car drive by, and it slows down. I'm thinking, oh, great. Obviously, he sees the turkeys I'm watching, so he's probably going to park. And I heard his car door, and I was like, oh, boy, here we go. And I'm sitting there, and here comes the turkeys, and all of a sudden I hear something behind me, and sure enough, here comes this older guy with like a 13-year-old kid, and it was a boy. And he obviously didn't see me, and I stand up. I'm like, dude, what are you doing? And the look on his face he was shocked. He's like, oh, man, I didn't even see you. I was like, well, you obviously parked behind me. Why would you come in here knowing that there's a high probability that I'm in here somewhere? I was like, there's a good chance that you could have shot right over my head. And the look on his face is priceless. I was thinking, yeah, this is real nice. You're showing this kid, how not to hunt, basically. I was going to say something, but I didn't really want to ruin his day. I just picked up my stuff and I left. And I'm like, well, good luck. Sure enough, I went back to my truck and he was parked right behind me. I'm thinking, really? Why would you even go in there? When I see somebody parked, I just go to the next spot. Number one, I don't like competition, and I don't want to ruin somebody else's hunt,
Yeah. Yeah, I'm sure it's just a matter of, it's good for people to think about that, right? They don't realize maybe the gravity of the situation that they're getting into.
Right. I mean, I've had a guy walk in on me and shoot my decoy. So that's the risk you take, though, fanning and using tom decoys on public. Because you really just got to be. That's why I try not to set them up directly in line with me. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
So
right.
if something stupid happens, you're kind of off to the side. And,
yeah, that's a good point of safety on setups too. Is you don't want to put yourself in a potential direct line of fire from your decoys if someone's in the opposite position.
Especially if you put your decoys up on a ridge and you're kind of off on the one side. Somebody could easily come up the other side and, oh, there's a tom, thinking it's a tom, but it's your decoy. That could be a dangerous situation. So I kind of put them off to the side no matter what.
So what have you found, I guess, from different weather patterns on the behavior of the birds that you see? So, you got sunny mornings, high pressure mornings where it's clear versus overcast days, or even stormy, rainy weather. I mean, does that change the way you hunt? What do you see the birds behave?
It doesn't really change the way. Well, I'll hunt either way in any weather, but I notice on those clear, high-pressure days, mornings, those days, they're really active. They're real vocal all day long. And, of course, warm days, too. For some reason, they just like warm days versus cold days. Another thing I notice is thunderstorms. I don't know if it's the pressure or if it's the thunder, like the frequency from the thunder, rumbling, or what it is, but there's something about it when a thunderstorm comes in, man, those turkeys really get fired up. I don't know what it is. There's got to be some, scientific stuff behind it, but I really wish I could, read it on it. But there's actually a biologist I was talking to about turkeys, and he was saying, like when it was 50 below out this past winter or whatever,
Right.
that a lot of times those turkeys, they don't even leave the trees for a couple days. They'll be up there and they just stay up there. And in the spring, when you shoot a tom, I don't know if you ever noticed, but there's a line in their beard. You ever notice that?
No, I haven't. But
Yeah. Well,
I haven't shot that many though.
Go back to your beards and you'll see every once in a while there's like a weird line. And what that line is, it's a stress line. Basically, like a part, like whatever, over the winter, either it was super cold and they couldn't get out of the trees, or they just couldn't get food, or something happened over the winter. And you'll see that in turkey beards. They have stress lines. And
really? So is it a spot that's a change in color, or it's a change, or it's a lack of hair?
Like, how the strands of the beard come down? It'll be almost like a crease, and then it continues straight again. It's pretty weird. When you go back and look at all your beards from the turkeys you've shot, and you'll notice that you'll be like, interesting. Some of them have 2 or 3 of them. Some of them have 1. Some of them don't have any. Depends on the winter and how stressed they get, and stuff like that. But a lot of times they'll be in those, like this past winter, I have a feeling that a lot of turkeys died this year because of the cold. And then we had all that snow. It melted and encrusted over. They can't dig through that stuff. So I haven't found any dead turkeys yet, but I know my buddy, he found like 10 of them on his property. So that ain't good.
No, I mean, you're right. Those type of conditions make it very difficult for them to browse for food.
Right.
When you get that heavy snowfall and then ice, that does make it very difficult for them to get access to the stuff they normally feed on. But it makes sense that they would roost during that bitter cold and stay held up. Yeah. But at a certain point, they got to get out and feed.
Right, exactly. I mean,
I've noticed that too when you get breaks in weather. I mean, this might seem sort of obvious, but that their movement and their calling, when you get a light rain going on or it's overcast, it'll shut down. They might still be out active, but they don't call anywhere near as much. And then once you get a break in that weather and the sun comes out, they seem to just ignite and start calling.
I was going to say something when it's real cold and rainy in the morning, a lot of times they don't even fly out of the tree until an hour or 2 after daylight, and a lot of guys get up and leave thinking that the tom ain't coming in, but they just haven't flown out of the trees yet. It's something they do. I don't know. They like to sit up in them trees.
Do you use that as a tactic at all to try to time those weather fronts and then get out, or at least wait a weather front out so you can get that real peak in activity right after the weather breaks?
Oh yeah, regardless, I'm out there either way. But yeah, in a way, yeah, I'll sit back and wait. A lot of times I'll just sit back and listen and just use that morning for a scouting mission and be like, okay, I'm gonna come back in the evening, as the weather clears out or something. Maybe midday they'll fire up. And a lot of times you'd be surprised. You go back midday, those turkeys are right back in those roosting areas. You give a couple calls, they'll fire up and they'll come running right in. For instance, it was a few years ago, I was going to check out this roosting area, and it was the day before opener. I went in there about 1 o'clock. I didn't even make it down in there. There was 2 toms gobbling on this side of the horse trail, and there was 5 of them down in the swamp. So I sat down. I got down in there, and there was like a blind from gun hunters or whatever. I sat down in there, and I made a couple calls on my slate call, And all of a sudden, here they come, those 5 toms. They walked right past me. I couldn't believe it. I was like, really? The day before opener, you know? And so I let those walk past me. I went down in the roosting area. I figured everything out. I came back. Those other 2 toms on the other side of the road, now they were out in that snowmobile trail or the horse trail, so I was locked down. I couldn't get out of there. I mean, you'd be surprised on how close they stay to those roosting areas.
Right. Yeah, so you're kind of stuck in a position and you have no safe access out without busting them.
And actually, I don't know if you recall, I have a video on YouTube that Tom, he's real close to me, and then he gobbles. I don't know if you remember that. It's like a short, it's like a 1-minute video, but he's super close, and this crow calls and he gobbles, and I'm in cutoff sleeve shirt, I'm in shorts, and I'm kneeling against a tree filming this, and he didn't have a clue I was there. And I actually killed him the next day on opening day, up in that hardwoods where they were roosting. So it all worked out. But yeah, that was crazy. For the most part, they stick around those roosting areas if they're not bumped.
Right. You talked about this with me a little bit before. Was just about certain things that you see in a turkey when you're calling.
Oh yeah.
That give you an indication of that turkey is either in the mood for your call or not in the mood for your call, and what are some of those different things you observed?
Yeah, they're real moody birds. You'd be surprised, like when you see a tom out in the field, and I always have my binocs on me, and when I call to them, one of the indications is when they flap that wing, it's probably not a good idea. They're going to either shut up. I've seen them run. I've seen them shut up. And I've seen them go out of strut and not strut again and just walk away. And you'll never see them again. It's either pressure. They know it's not a real hen, from the frequency. And I don't know if I think I mentioned this before, but all the calls that are getting bought at Fleet and stuff, it's all the same
you mentioned
call.
that.
Those guys with the custom calls, those are the ones that are really reaching out to the birds and bringing them in. But
so you talked about they'll do different things with their wings or maybe lift up their head. There's just certain things that you see them doing.
They have a snoot on their head, the thing that dangles.
Right.
When you're calling to him, if you're calling, you can watch that snoot. If it sucks up, you might as well stop calling because he knows something's up or, something's wrong, obviously, because he knows it ain't right or it's the wrong frequency or something. He just knows. Those old toms, they're not dumb. And that wing, too, that's another indication that they didn't like something. Most of the time when you call to them and they go into a half strut or into full strut, then you're on to something. It's like, okay, now we can work with this bird. But you'll find out real quick when they're out in the field and you call to them, just by watching their movements, what mood they're in. If they're going to come or if you're going to have to work at them a little bit. Like that snoot and the wing flap is your most detailed, visual warning. Like, okay, I need to back off on the call, because obviously he didn't like that. And they do that for several reasons. I've noticed right before they fly, they'll flap their wings. It's like they're getting ready to go,
Right.
Or
right.
It's just, I don't know. I think it's just like it's a thing. They're getting ready to run or fly. It's just what they do when they get nervous. And of course, they'll stick their head up. That's another one where they're just looking. They come out of strut. But that snood, that's one thing you really want to watch, especially when they're coming in and they're on your decoys. If you pay attention to their snood, they'll be coming in hot, and you'll be sitting there, and all of a sudden you move your arm or something, or they see something. You don't even have to move. If they just see something they don't like, if you see that snood stuck back up, you might as well get ready to shoot or it's all over. They obviously seen something. There's little things you can watch. It's that wing flap and that snood coming up.
So to tie some of these things together, I mean, you're scouting, your evening roosting is when you're doing your owl calls or your other calls to try to locate them.
Right.
In the morning on a scout or a hunt, you're really being quiet, just waiting for that bird to leave the roost and hit the ground. So
Mhm.
are you when they're on tree in the morning, are you doing any calling at all?
Yeah, I will with my owl hooter, and that's about it. Because I don't want
Okay.
them to let them know that I'm a turkey. You know what I mean?
Okay, so you're not mimicking a turkey at all when they're up in the tree in
No,
the morning.
not in the morning. Definitely not. I don't
So
want them. What's that?
so then if let's say the turkey pitches down, he hits the ground, he moves in the opposite direction of your decoys or something like that transpires. Do you call at that point, or do you try to get up and move?
I will just to see if they gobble back to see what direction they're moving in, and then I'll sit there and I'll look at my phone and be like, okay, where are they going? What terrain can I use to get around on them? Are they going to a field? You know, they're going that way for some reason. You know,
Okay.
so and I'll sit. I learned this the hard way. When I was younger, I would just get up when they would fly down, and I'd get mad and be like, "Dang it, you know, they're gone." And most of the time, you'd be surprised, but they're coming to you. You just don't know it. You think they're moving off, but they're really coming to you. And I've bumped a couple birds doing that. Like, dang, you know, I should have just sat there and waited. But now I have a little more patience, and I give it, you know, like an hour, or if I know they're moving in a certain direction, that's when I whip out the map. All right, how can I get around on them? Are they going to a field? Can I get there before they get there? Because you would be surprised on how fast a turkey moves once he hits the ground. I mean, they cover ground.
Yeah. Yeah.
There's a couple instances where me and Predator TC, we were running to get in front of these toms, and they you know, damn near beat us. But it's just you just got to go. When I hunt with people, you know, I like hunting with people, but I'm really picky on who I hunt with because in some instances you have to get up and you have to go. You know what I mean? You can't be slagging around like, oh, come on. It's like, no, we got to go, man.
You
These
got to
turkeys,
move.
they don't move slow. They move quick. It
Well,
gets tiring after a while.
yeah. Well, I mean, what kind of distance have you put on in a day on your feet when you're trying
Oh,
to work around these guys?
well, that's a good question. Me and my good buddy Travis, my main hunting partner, I guess you could say, I think it was 2 seasons ago, we put on almost 14 miles in 2 days. So, and we were cooking. We were covering ground. We had umpteen opportunities. We could have shot a bird right out of the tree, but obviously I don't know if that's legal or not. I wouldn't personally do it, but he could have if he wanted to. The thing was 20 yards, you know, all day long. That first day we were on 6, 7 different birds that just didn't happen, or something happened where either he couldn't see it or the bird saw us or it just wasn't the right setup or something, you know. And then finally that next day, like midday, he was getting pretty bummed, and we were getting pretty tired. I was about 10 miles into it already. I was like, well, let's go check this one field. I've been seeing this tom about 1 o'clock every day. Sure enough, we drive past there, and there he is. So we drive around, we get up in the woods, and we sneak up, and he was coming down the field edge, and he came right to us, and he laid him over. That was a fun, hard-earned bird.
Yeah, that's a lot of
But
getting out though and doing more active style of hunting it and giving yourself some opportunities. That sounds like a lot of fun. So,
I mean, you could sit there in a blind, but you're not going to have as much action. You really need to get out there and move. It's just the way it is.
well, and I guess that's
I
a good point too, depending on where you're hunting. If you're on a really small farm, when you've got limited access to how
oh, right,
you bump birds on and bump birds off, that's going to limit you on how much you
right,
can move versus being on 30,000 acres in public where you're able to move around and really traverse and chase these birds.
right. I'll drive around and I'll stop. I'll get out with my big box call because that thing really cuts the sound. It drives deep. I'll hit my box call. I'll do a couple cuts, some yelps. I'll listen. If I don't hear nothing, I go down to the next spot. I just keep moving. And then if that doesn't produce, that's when I go into those deep spots. Then I start getting out and I start walking like, all right, now it's time to work. You know what I
Right,
mean?
right.
And usually Well, I would say most of the time you hear one from the road or spot one from the field, from your truck, and then you could put a plan together that way. But I like getting in there deep, and when they gobble, when they're in there deep, it's almost guaranteed you're going to run into them because they probably most likely haven't been bothered all day. Most of the hunters around here are hunting right off the road. You'd be surprised. I almost never see anybody deep in there.
From a timing perspective, when you are calling at that bird, so you go in, you call, you identify that a bird's coming. Because I've had this happen to me where I'll call, the bird responds back, I'll call again, he responds again, and then I'm waiting. Do you have sort of a certain formula for how many calls is too much, too little? And what is, what's your time frame that you wait for them to come in? I think it's kind of a concept of being patient. I've had times where I've called, I'm waiting, I call again, the bird calls back, and then I get impatient. I stand up and the bird's 30 yards from me and he was just making his way into me and he runs off.
Oh yeah. And there are so many times. Most of the time, like in the morning, I try not to call much on the roost, but if you're like midday and all of a sudden you're just out in the woods and you hear one gobble by himself.
Yeah, exactly.
I don't call at all. I'll just keep going to where I think he is without bumping him. But every once in a while, you'll just run into him. Just the way it is. But the advantage of that, of not calling, is when you do call, more like 9 times out of 10, he's going to come running right to you. So make sure before you call, you have a spot set up and ready to sit down and get ready, because they're going to come running. I've ran into so many situations like that.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Right.
Yeah, I think I even had one time where I was set up on a bird and I obviously didn't know for sure at the time he was coming in, but I was on this downslope sitting right up against a fallen tree, and I made a couple calls. I could hear this bird on the neighboring property actually calling back. And then there was a big pause, like 25, 30 minutes of silence where, there was no audible call back. And I started getting a little impatient. So I called again. There was no response back. And I decided to just ever so slightly like stand up. And I was on, the edge of sort of this ridge that down pitched. And I looked, and the turkey, he jumped up on top of a log, stared right at me, and turned around and ran off. And then, then to add insult to injury, I'm like, well, I get up and I made my way to the top of the ridge where there was like this old logging road, and there was probably a group of 5 jakes that were just like at the logging road that ran off.
Oh man, good story.
So what do you do to deal with those pressured birds, the ones that have been hunted a lot or are sort of wise to the game? Is there anything specific that you try to do with those guys?
Definitely, you got to get in there close. The closer you get on them in the morning, your best chance is either going to be off the roost or when they're coming back to the roost. Because in the middle of the day, they're on their game. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
They're really paying attention. They've probably been bumped numerous times by mushroom hunters, horseback riders, people out hiking. You'd be surprised on who's out there. But during the middle of the day, they're really weary. Even when I've seen them run from wind, like the wind will pick up and leaves blow and boom, they're gone. Because they've seen something they didn't like. But usually the morning and the evening is your best chance. And another thing I like doing is I like driving around, and you'll see them in the fields like right before dark. And then you're like, okay, well, obviously it's like an hour before dark. They ain't going far from here. So that's a good way of locating, especially those lone toms. You'll see them. They'll be out in those fields all by themselves right before dark. It's like, oh, yeah, he's going to be roosting real close here. So either you go out, I'll go down the block and I'll come back. I'll get out, slipped up the field edge. I'll hoot. If I get them to gobble, then I'll slip in, pinpoint them. Or in the morning, a lot of times, if you think you know where he is, you can. But then you're flirting with the daylight thing. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Kind of. If you think you know where he is and you go in there and you don't have him roosted the night before, you go in there the next morning and you hoot. He's only going to gobble, obviously, when it starts getting daylight. So now it's getting risky because you have to kind of work your way towards him, and there's a chance that he's going to see you, especially in the wide open when they're like, by the field and stuff, in those wide open areas.
Right.
The later the season gets, the better it gets. You can get real close. It gets super green. They don't see you. You can almost sneak. I actually do that a lot. I'll I won't get up as early. I'll just wait. I start to get lazy as the seasons go on.
As you put on like 10,000 miles, you started.
Right. You start to get a little tuckered out. I mean, it's all fun and games in the early season, but by the time the 6th season comes, it's just like, oh man, I'm just gonna go out in the morning and listen. It just gets to that point. But it's so green in late season, you can almost, that's how you get away with it. I mean, you don't have to roost in the late season. It's always good to roost, but you don't have to because you can literally hear them in the morning, sneak right underneath them because of the green. They don't see you. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And you can get away with that a lot. A lot of newer hunters can use that, for public land especially. You can get right underneath them. The greener it gets, the better it gets. In early season, it's pretty hard because there ain't no leaves or nothing. That's when they spot you. Even in those thicker hardwoods, they'll spot you sneaking up.
What are you? Since you're pretty mobile during a lot of these hunts, and you're, I guess, prepared to go on the move if the birds go on the move. I mean, what are you bringing with you in your gear bag? Are you just, I guess, what are the essentials that you have with you?
A lot of times I'll just have a flashlight, like a red one, really low when I'm sneaking in the morning. There's some areas I'm not familiar with, but for the most part, I got them figured out. I wouldn't even use a flashlight in the morning, but if I'm with somebody, I'll use the red one. They don't pick that up as much. But otherwise, I just have flashlight, my backpack with a flashlight, some water, or a tea or something. And then obviously my owl hooters, and locating calls, and camera. I'll have a video camera with maybe a camera stand. And that will go in my decoy bag that holds my decoy. I can get a lot of stuff in there. And
when you're filming like that, how do you control the camera and get it filming before the turkey comes in? I mean, you just turn the camera on and let it run for quite a while you're waiting for him to come in?
Yeah, it'll vary. I mean, I'll have the camera right next to me, and then I like to get when the woods wake up and then they're gobbling. And then there's just a certain point where you're eating up your battery, so you kind of just shut it off. But when it gets close to when I think he's going to fly out, I'll fire it back up. That way it's running when he flies out of the tree. And for the most part, I have it zoomed all the way out, and the camera will be right next to me or in between my legs so I can slowly move it, And actually, last year, I used my beast arm. I had it up on this tree, and it was on the right side of me, and I had it perfect. It was right next to my knee. So I had my gun in my left hand, and I just had the camera on the beast arm, and it worked out perfect. I'm going to have to do that again this year. The only thing is it's, kind of awkward walking in with it, but.
Yeah, I've done that before too, where I've used that beast arm on those ground hunt scenarios and just actually wrapped it around a bundle of brush before to get it locked in, and then been able to use it that way. It works pretty well.
Otherwise, I just have this tripod stand, but yeah, just camera, a couple calls. I'm a slate call guy. I have a box call. I don't do mouth calls anymore. I used to do that a lot, but not anymore. Because the way I have a system, like when I'm sitting on the ground, I'll have my gun up, and I'll literally just have my hands between my legs, and my leg will block most of that movement when I bring my hand up for, to shoot or whatever. But It's all within 2 or 3 inches of movement. I can drop the call and have it at my hands if I need it right there. I don't know. It's just what I'm used to. It's just what I do. I don't have a problem. And a lot of times, like in early season, I'll wear a mask. And when it gets close to that later season, I don't even wear a mask because it gets to be so green. A lot of times they'll pop up when they're coming in. They can see sometimes, but most of the time it's so thick. When they pop out, they're like 30 yards away, and by then you're already looking down your barrel,
Right.
And most of
Right.
the face is covered, so I don't know. But I do wear a mask, I guess, in early season.
Have you?
Sometimes when I'm spotting and stalking, I don't wear a mask at all. It's just a hassle. Hard to breathe, gets caught up. Sometimes it'll ride up and cover your eyes, and it's just when you're in the moment, your heart's pounding. Just one less thing to worry about.
Yeah, one less thing to move or have to deal with. Do you
Exactly.
have you tried hunting with a bow at all?
Yeah, I used to hunt them on private land. I got about 5 or 6 of them with the bow. I wounded a few of them too, and that's pretty much why I stopped bow hunting for them, because I didn't like wounding them. It's a lot of things happen, I mean, it's a small target, and I just want to make sure they're dead.
Right.
So
Right.
I'm just a gun hunter now. I mean, I will bow hunt for them in a blind if the situation is right, and I know they're going to be in that field. But more times than not, I'm carrying the gun so I can crawl. You can't really crawl with a bow with your face down in the mud and all that stuff, and it's hard. I mean, it's hard to pull it off without a blind. So it can be done. I've done it before. I know TC has done it before, but I don't know. I like my opportunities to be high. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. Yeah.
Good opportunities, high chances. With a bow, your chances are a lot harder, especially on public where you're hunting public. The birds are going to be weary. You might as well have a gun. Go through all that trouble.
No, it makes sense. I mean,
Right.
there's a specific challenge to hitting them with the bow and hitting them good so you don't wound them, having them fly off. If they go into an area that you can't get to, then it makes it tougher. Plus,
My
depending
one
on
buddy's been successful with it. He puts a fan on his bow. He hunts the cattle. He does all that in the public. He just kills them every year. I don't know. I guess it's what you focus on. I just focus on that roosting and getting them off the roost. It's like my number one tactic besides spot and stalk.
So, what are some different call patterns that you might put together? Do you have calls with you that you could go through a few of them? Do you have one of your box calls with you?
No, I was actually looking for them before when we were doing the intermission thing, but I couldn't find them. I don't know where they are. I'll have to find them, but
Well, you better find them in a couple weeks. You got to start.
I know I'll find them. But yeah, let's see.
Do you
Calling wise,
Yeah, go ahead.
When I get real close to the roost like that, for the most part, I'll let the decoys do the work. And if I do call, it'll be a couple subtle clucks and some purrs and a couple light yelps. But that's about it. I don't go too crazy unless they're off in the distance. Then I'll do some crazy cutting and yelping and stuff, trying to get them fired up, stuff like that. But for the most part, I don't really call. I'll call at them like at first to see where they're at. But most of the time, I'm probably like a coyote. I'm just sneaking up to them, without them knowing. And when they least suspect it, I'll start calling. And most of the time, I'll be right on top of them, so it surprises them. And then they come in anyways. Or a lot of times you'll surprise them and they don't like that. And like that goes back to the watching their movements, like with the snoot and the wing flap and stuff. You'll see that. You'll sneak up on them. They'll be all good as you're calling. All of a sudden, you'll get close to them and you call, and boom, they go off running. I've had turkeys run from me. It's pretty crazy.
Run from you when you're calling to them, or just run?
Yeah,
and they're not.
How pressured they are. They know it's like a hunter. It's. I don't know what they're thinking when it happens, but I've had it happen so many times where I didn't call to a tom, but I snuck up to him. All of a
Yeah.
sudden I made one series of yelps, go look up, boom, gone. Take
Gone.
off running. Really? What the heck? It's just either they've been called to or they know the frequency isn't real. You know, they can tell. I think they can tell. That's why it goes back to the guys with those custom calls. Those are the ones that are really calling the toms in. You'll get lucky every once in a while with a store-bought call, but for the most part, everybody's using those store-bought calls, and
Right.
they know. By the time the third and fourth season comes, they've heard every call in the book.
Yeah. Yeah, they're probably accustomed to in a certain area where they're going to get the most amount of calls, you know, and where they're used to hearing hens and hearing calling in a specific area all year long, and then all of a sudden during the stretch of the time of the year, there's calling coming from everywhere. You know.
Yeah, another thing is they'll park right on the road and call, and they get the toms. They know, you know, they get used to that. And I never call from the road. It's pretty rare when I do. Most of the time, I'll park and I'll walk off the road and try to get in there.
Yeah.
But
Go ahead.
try not to really call to them at all. They know. They learn over time.
That's actually probably one of the biggest things in listening to you about your different tactics that I definitely have to change up differently from what I'm doing is just call less. Less is better.
I
think
mean, if they're hot, yeah, call. I mean, you'll know right away because you'll be able to tell if the gobbling's getting closer and closer, you know. But you'll be able to tell right away. They're either going to shut up, they're going to run from you. And I've learned this from over time, grinding my teeth in hill country. Those birds are really weary over there. I don't know why, but they just are. I don't know if it's the high population of predators, you know, like coyotes and stuff, or they're on their game over there. And I cut my teeth over there learning from those birds. And when I came over here, it was like a zoo over here compared to over there. It's like night and day difference. They're so easy to hunt over here compared to where I was hunting them in western Wisconsin. I mean, they were on their game over there. They knew, like I said, that one tom I was hunting, he would not leave that limb until he saw daylight from the sun on a sunny day. He would not fly off that limb until the sun cracked up over the ridge. That's just how, you know, they have their stuff down over there. It was pretty hard to kill turkeys at first. I ain't gonna lie, but after a while, I started, you know, really getting in on those roosting areas. And patience was another thing. I would get up and leave right away. Like, for instance, I had this flock of turkeys. They flew down. They went down into the valley, and I'm thinking, oh, great, well, it's all over.
Right.
Whatever, I'm going back to the truck. Get back up to the truck, and I'm sitting there. I'm looking at maps. All of a sudden, I look over right where I was sitting. There's 4 big toms sitting there. I'm thinking, you've got to be kidding me. I was just sitting there 25 minutes ago. So I had to eat that up. You know, I was sitting there at the truck like, man, they were there for a good 2 hours just strutting right where I was sitting, and there's no way that I could get down and around because the private that I was hunting only went so far, and there's just no way I could do it. I should have just stayed there. Oh, hard lesson learned.
Yeah. Was there any particular story that kind of sticks out in your mind about one of these hunts that you've done? A challenging bird or just situation? I mean, I know you talked a little bit about you had a hunt in western Wisconsin where you had five shell rounds with you, and you got close to going through them all.
That was an interesting day. I got permission from the farmer, and it's rare you get permission from that guy, and it's just a turkey haven. I mean, it's just one of those spots. You sit there all day, and you're going to have numerous encounters, and I got lucky, and it's basically like a 400 acre cornfield, and there used to be a big oak tree out in the middle of it. And after all the years, it fell over, and now there's just a rock pile there. I always used to set up that rock pile. Well, I was reading my phone on that. I don't know if you remember that Mark Anthony guy. He got busted for, lying about that deer or whatever. That 200.
Ground blind hunting, and he fabricated a few deer. Yeah.
I was sitting there reading that on my phone on the Beast. I was reading the Beast thread on it, and I had my decoys like 10, 15 yards away, and I made a series of calls, and I put my call down, and I'm reading my phone, and all of a sudden I look up, and there's 2 toms. They're sitting right at the decoys. I'm like, oh my God. And I only brought 5 shells with me. And I had this new scope on my shotgun. It's like a tactical flat shield scope.
Right.
And the battery was off because I literally just sat down. This happened within 10 minutes of me setting up. And I was thinking, okay, I have to drop my phone, turn the scope on, turn the safety off on the gun, and try to pull a shot off. So I dropped my phone. The one Tom saw it. He took off running. The other Tom didn't know what happened. Now he's looking. So I grabbed the gun. I throw the safety off. I put the scope on, and by now he's 40, 50 yards away. And I take 2 shots at him, and I miss. And I'm kind of just basically laughing, like, what the heck just happened? Like, I just literally just set up, and this happened within 10 minutes. So that's 2 rounds gone. I have 3 left.
Yeah.
And I'm just sitting there laughing, like, wow, I can't believe that just happened. Well, whatever. I go back to reading the thread, and time goes on, and about noon, another turkey fires up, and he's gobbling, and I call to him, and he calls back, and all of a sudden, there he is. He pops up, and he sees my decoy, and I'm telling you, he came on a dead run. He looked like a big barrel, just running all the way in. And I don't know what happened. I choked, or I don't know if he was out of range, and I thought he was closer than what he was. But I shot at him, missed. Shot at him again, missed, but he didn't fly. Like, his wing kind of like flopped, and you could see feathers fly. I was like, oh, I hit him. So I took off running after him, and he ran down into the valley. And I'm telling you, I searched for a good 3 or 4 hours for that turkey, and I never found him. So either he's still alive, he made it, or he died, and I just never found him. Right. So now I'm kicking myself. I get back up to my spot. I'm like, whatever. I got 1 round left. And now this thunderstorm's coming in, and you can just hear it. It's just roaring and rumbling. I'm like, oh, great. Now I'm going to get wet on top of it. Now I'm all, I'm pissy about missing 3 toms. And I'm sitting here, and all of a sudden, this tom, he gobbles down into the left of me. I'm like, oh, hey, here we go, Maybe this one will work with me. So I'm sitting there, I'm calling, and he's getting closer and closer, and sure enough, he pops out down in the left on the cornfield down there. He had a hen with him. They made their way up in front of me, and the hen, she stayed back, and when they got up to the top, he finally seen my decoy. The hen stayed back there, and the tom, he worked his way all the way to me. I'm like, oh, yeah, here we go. Yeah, I'm already thinking how I'm going to cook this baby. And I was thinking, you ain't missing this one. So he comes in, and for some reason, he decides to turn around, and he goes all the way back, another 300 yards back to the tent. I'm thinking, oh, no, it's all over. He was coming in, and now, he's leaving, and the thunderstorm's coming in, and, oh, man, now I'm really just pissing and moaning, and all kinds of swear words, I'm sure, were coming out. And all of a sudden, the hen, she starts coming back. I'm like, all right, well, maybe I got a chance.
Right.
The hen, she went down below the field because there's like a little rise in the field. I couldn't see her, but he took the high part of the field and worked his way right to me. And it was just a matter of time. He got so close, and he committed, and he started coming in. I'm like, all right, you're done. I let him come in all the way to the decoys this time, and I laid him over. And I ran over there, and it turned out to actually be a double bearder. So, and then that next year, I actually killed another double bearder in the same exact spot. So I think it has something to do with the genetics around there.
Yeah, that makes sense. I think I've heard that before, where people shoot multi-beard turkeys in the same areas, and typically attributed to genetics or even certain nutrition factors as well.
Right, yeah, and that reminds me, my buddy, he got a triple bearder in the same exact area just a few seasons earlier, and was another really good, memorable hunt because that's when I really started getting serious about turkey hunting, and he kind of just laughed at me, like, "Oh, we ain't gonna get nothing," you know. And I had them all figured out over there. I had a couple toms located. We went up there. I killed my bird opening morning. We went back. We dressed my bird out. We had breakfast. I was like, "Well, let's go. Let's go get yours." And he's kind of just laughing, like, "Yeah, right. It ain't gonna happen like this." I'm like, "Anything can happen, dude." So we get up there. We park my truck. It was within 10 minutes. All of a sudden, this Tom, he fires up down in the valley. I was like, "See?" I was like, "Get your stuff. Let's go." He's like, "What do you mean?" I was like, "Come on, let's go." So we were in such a rush. I forgot my hat. He forgot his mask, but I brought my face mask. So literally, when we got down in there, from the time when we left the truck, from where the turkey first gobbled, we ran across this field, got down into the valley, set up. He was already coming down the other side. He gave me his hat. I gave him my mask. We kind of switched out because I had the camera to block my face.
Right.
He wanted the mask, and yeah, that turkey came down. It was a triple bearder. That was his first turkey. His first turkey was a triple bearder. That was a good season. I'll remember that for a long time. And
nice.
yeah, I pretty much,
well, hopefully if I come up and hunt with you, that same type of situation will happen.
Well, we don't have that property anymore, so that's probably not going to happen, unfortunately.
We'll just have to find a triple bearder somewhere else.
Oh yeah, they're around. And actually, thanks for reminding me. His second turkey, get this, his second turkey was from the Kettle Moraine, and guess how many beards that one had? 3.
Nice.
He killed 2 triple bearders, and I killed 2 double bearders. And there's a guy I know at work that's been hunting for 50 years, and he is yet to kill a double bearder or even see one. I mean, I don't know, it's just luck, I guess, but just think, his first turkey was a triple bearder, and his second was a triple bearder.
Sure.
What are the odds?
Yeah, well, you could say beginner's luck, or now it'll be interesting to see what he ends up getting from here on out.
Well, he shot a couple more toms since then, but they haven't been double or triple bearders. I mean, I think it's just luck, really.
Yeah.
Nobody really. I mean, there was 4 toms that came in. He could have killed any one of those toms, and it wouldn't have been a triple bearder. It was just he got lucky and he shot the one that was a triple bearder.
Right.
So yeah,
that's pretty cool.
I mean, I got so many stories. I could sit here for an hour. I killed 14 toms in the past 4 seasons, and that's not even including my family or friends. I mean,
well, that's another good point or thing I wanted to bring up with you. I know that you cook a lot of different wild game. You like to cook and your fish, your venison. I mean, what's your preferred thing to do with turkey?
Well, since I get so many, I like to breast them out. Otherwise, lately I've been getting into smoking them. I'll take the whole bird in up the Camel Sport here. They got a pretty good business up there. They do really good smoke jobs on them. And then otherwise, I'll give them to family members. I give them to my grandparents or people at work or my mom, Or for the most part, I'm breasting them out and I wrap them in bacon. I'll throw them on the grill or put them in the oven or I'll smoke them. I like a lot of smoked food, so most of the time I'm probably going to be smoking them, especially the breast and the legs. So, like tomorrow, I got 3 corned beef going on the smoker. Oh, yeah. It'll be good.
Nice.
I mean, yeah, when you kill that many turkeys, after a while, it just gets to be too much to be plucking all the feathers, and you may as well just breast them and take the legs. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, yeah.
The guys might get on me about that, but it's just the way it is.
Right. I guess what else would you want to tell some new people getting into this? I mean,
definitely for the new hunters, just be mobile, just keep moving. There's so many times where I see the same hunter in the same field every morning. I'll go talk to him and be like, well, you seeing anything? Nope. You hearing anything? Not really. No, but I try to tell these guys I run into, I see you in the same field every day. You should, switch it up once. Move around. There's 30,000 acres out there. If you can't find a turkey in 30,000 acres, you might as well just stay home. Honestly, I mean, I see it time and time again, the same truck parked in the same spot every year. It's the same people. And, I don't know if they just don't get it or they're lazy or they're just waiting for a miracle to happen. But I make my luck, I create my own luck by going out, scouting heavily, driving, listening, roosting. You put all that stuff together. The more of that you do, the better your chances of getting on any really public land turkey. It's just like deer hunting.
Yeah.
It's all scouting. More scouting you can do, the better. You can go out there and not scout, go out there in the morning and listen for them, but that's just harder. You're just making it hard for yourself. Not only do you have to compete with other people, but if you know that the tom is in a tree in a certain area, you can get there 2 hours before daylight and beat everybody, and then you're in the game. You know what I mean? If
Right.
you get there and there's 3 trucks parked, now what are you going to do? You're either going to go in there and mess up everyone's hunt, or, I don't know, you're going to look like a jerk.
Yeah, it sounds to me, obviously you're where you said you're making your own luck, but getting out there and scouting a significant amount of time like you do day after day leading up to that opening season, you're building a lot of data that's going to allow you to switch it up and move on these birds, which seems to be very important.
Like, as soon as this podcast is done, I'm probably going to go for another drive and see if I can, see what I see what's in what field, stuff like that. I know right now they're in a lot of cornfields because a lot of that snow is melting, and wherever it's not flooded, I noticed this one field all winter long, the guy's been spreading manure, and I kind of call that the honey wagon. It's pretty comical. Actually, in western Wisconsin, it was like a dinner bell. They would be out feeding as soon as they heard that tractor fire up. It was a visual thing or a hearing thing. They would go right to that field because they know the honey wagon's coming. And what I mean by that is it's the good stuff. You got all that, the corn and stuff that doesn't get digested. You get bugs. There's different bugs. All types. They like that. I don't know what it's in there, but they're in there eating it, and they like that when the manure is spread. That's for sure. The honey wagon.
Yeah, I think there must be a field out in some of the areas in Erin where I go out to, because I've seen as many as probably 40 birds on this field on a regular basis in this one particular spot. And I know the guy's got, he's got a large cornfield that kind of surrounds his property, and in that one particular area, I don't know if they've got manure or something that just concentrates there, but those birds are always there.
Yeah, it's got to be what he's either putting manure or it's either the fertilizer. It's something there that they like.
Yeah.
A lot of times when they throw that manure down, it gets washed away, and what's left is corn and the stuff that's not digested, and that's what they're going after.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah. Like right now, they're in the cornfields, and I noticed that wherever there was a high population of acorn crops, like last fall, they like to focus on those areas too. You'll see them, and there'll be a lot of scratching in there wherever there's high acorn crops.
Yeah.
Just for some reason, they seem to find them.
Yeah, that's an interesting point too. I think, do we discuss, I know you talked about the different sign that you might see in specific areas. What sign do you look for near like roosting trees versus like field edges and things like that? Are you looking for a specific sign when you're tracking them?
Yeah, actually, if it's real muddy or snow on the ground, if you go into a field, you can actually find a gobbler strutting zone because he's going to have, well, number one, there's going to be a dusting area there, like out in the middle of the field. They like to do that. They like to dust themselves. Number two, if it's muddy or if it's dry, you'll be able to see wing drag marks from when they strut. Same within the snow. That's another good way of determining the travel of direction is the way they're strutting. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
You really pick that out in the snow as their drag marks from their wings. It takes a trained eye to see that. You could, some guy would just be like, oh, that's, whatever. But you can literally see the drag marks in the mud, the dirt, or snow.
Right.
What was the question again?
No, I think it was just more of the sign that you're looking for. So.
Oh yeah.
So on roosting trees, what type of sign do you see around roosting trees, I guess? Do you look for that specifically?
Yeah, when I go in like midday, when I'm looking for the specific roosting tree, it's going to be real easy. There's going to be piles of scat right underneath a tree or a branch. There's going to be wing feathers, tail feathers, because a lot of times when they're sitting up in the tree, they like to groom themselves. They'll pluck feathers all day long or all night, grooming themselves. And a lot of times when they fly up into the trees, their feathers get ripped out from hitting branches and stuff. So you'll see that. You'll go into a roost area and be like, okay, there's a turkey roosting right here in this tree. Obviously, there's piles of scat right here. There's a couple wing feathers right here. There's probably a couple tail feathers over there. It's pretty obvious when you go in there. And there's a lot of scratchings on the ground, too, like big areas where they scratch the leaves, where they spend a lot of time. It's when you go in there, you'll know it's a roost area.
Yeah.
So just from the piles of scat alone. Because they don't just sit in one spot and poop, It's only happening when they're up in the tree, when they're not moving.
Yeah, I'll have to examine that a little closer next time I'm in some of those areas. I mean, the one roost area that sticks in out in my mind in particular, and this was years back, is actually a turkey vulture roost area that I came across. And this was like in hill country where, the turkey vultures would roost up in this big dead tree. And I remember coming across that when I was tracking a deer, and it was like you were walking into a dead zone. I mean, the smell of the ammonia because of all the poop, because there was probably 20 to 30 turkey vultures that would roost up on this tree because it was on the side of a ridge line that was near the Wisconsin River. So they had all those warm thermals that they'd glide around in there. But there was like, it was just ominous because of all this scat that was everywhere below the tree and that smell. And obviously turkey vultures are scavengers. So, yeah, it was interesting.
Right. I was going to say something, but I forgot what I was going to say. So much on my mind, we could talk for hours.
Yeah, I guess I think that covers all our topics that we got here. I don't know if you want to finish it out with a couple more owl calls. Those are always cool.
Yeah, let's see. I'm pretty sure we pretty much covered everything for the most part. I mean, for the most part, conclusion is for the new public land hunters is just get out there, scout as much as you can, map the stuff out, write it down. You're going to see patterns, and those patterns are pretty, they stick to those patterns. You'll be surprised on how much they don't move from their roosting areas. And even as the season goes on, you'd be surprised at how much they stay in that area. It'll just vary. But, yeah, scouting, you're going to have to, if you're hunting public, be prepared to walk. I mean, you can sit in one spot all day long every day of your season, but you're probably not going to get lucky.
Yeah, you're not going to have as much action.
Right.
You're making a lot of your action off of getting up and moving, and then no one trying to figure out where they're moving to.
Oh yeah, for sure. I mean, it's just like deer hunting. The more mobile you are, the better. And in my instance, I just call less. The more active, mobile you are, and the less you're calling, probably better your odds. And the
Yep.
more that you can get better at roosting and the time zones on that, I mean, that's half the battle. Is if you know where a turkey is for the next morning, that's half the hunt right there. You know what I mean? After you
Right.
find, you basically just have to figure out how to get in on him, and the other half of it is just the luck of him pitching down to you. I mean, but yeah, I guess we can wrap it up. I got a couple owl hooters I can do here. I mean, yeah, for the most part, when I go out hooting, it's just, I wish I could have found my pack before this. I would have had my coyote howler too. But, for the main part, you hit them with the...
That's so cool.
That's a really good one. And, oh, man, it's pretty funny. You hear some of these guys, they do try hooting and stuff in the morning, and, oh, man, do they sound horrible. I mean, I don't want to talk down on them, but I started there myself, but you'd be surprised at how many of these guys, they try calling, and you wonder why they don't get responses. I mean, it's all practice. You just got to practice the calling. I used to sit there and call all day. My mom would she would get sick of it. She ended up hiding my calls on me. I would just sit there and practice and practice and practice, and you can ask a lot of my buddies. I'm one of the best owl hooters they've ever heard. And it's all about the tone and like let's see, it's hard to explain. It's like a lot of guys, they try to do it all in one thing. It's all like this. Like, can you hear the different levels of the sound?
Yep.
Yeah, a lot of guys just try to go like that. It's like, no, you can't do that. You gotta.
When you sound like a rooster a little, almost.
Yeah, exactly. You gotta have that difference in the level and the frequency. You gotta just be like. See how I dropped it down at the end there?
Yep.
Yeah, see that those little subtle drops and the changes in the calling is what matters. Anybody can go out there and sound like a goose. But
probably a lot of that has to do, like you said, if you get out there in the evenings, and you're listening to a lot of owls and listen to how they call and how they're using their patterns.
I really sit there and I tell it to a lot of my buddies and family members. I'll be like, did you hear that? And they'll be like, no, I didn't hear. But listen, did you hear that owl over there? Listen to what he's doing and how and when the gobbler is gobbling to him. They only do it on certain calls.
Right.
And that's what you have to clue in on. Same with crows too. There's certain like the caws that they do. They don't all strike them. There's certain things that they gobble to. If you pay attention to those little things and you mimic it, you'll get a lot more responses. But it's all about that tone and the levels. It's like this. Like, that's another good one. You get them really wild up. You start low and you bring it up high. Like, you start low like this. Just like that, Different levels of the volume. That's what's going to get them the strike back at you. And, I mean, like I said, you would be surprised on what some of these guys sound like. It's hard to listen. And
it's like any piece in your arsenal. You got to practice it. You got to refine it. But that's why those turkeys get wise to a lot of sounds and calls that don't sound normal, and they run in the opposite direction.
That's true. And I'm telling you, most of the guys that have problem roosting, they'll be like, oh man, I just can't get them to gobble. It's timing and what they sound like. I'll take them out or I'll go with them and I'll be like, okay, do your thing. And when they start hooting, I'm like, okay, hold up. This is, obviously it's the timing or it's just what they sound like. They just sound like dying geese. You can't be doing that. You have to sound, if you want to get them to gobble, you have to sound legit or, authentic. And the best way to do that is you just got to sit there, and I even went on YouTube and I just listened to owls, and I sat there and I practiced with my hooter. Like I tried, I was doing what they were doing with when they were dropping their tone and going high versus, there's different notes, and it's almost like playing the guitar.
Right.
Which I also do.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, but yeah, I don't know. That's the main problem is I go in, and half of these guys, it's timing and what they sound like. If they can work on their calling and make it more sound authentic, then they're gonna up their odds big time. I don't know how much you call or what you sound like, but I can work with you a little bit,
Yeah,
It's pretty easy.
mine is very minimal. I mean, I use a crow call, and I use a slate stone
Right.
to call. But mine would
I
probably
like
fall into that category of the kind of store-bought general calls that sound like everything else. I think my biggest thing that is like I said, I call too much. Although messing with the crows, it can be an entertaining time. I've had whole flocks of crows land behind me and just are going wild for 5 minutes or so, and it's usually pretty entertaining. And they'll get the turkeys fired up when they're going around, especially if you hit like a feed cadence at the crows. They'll come in. It's funny.
The other thing is those cranes. They really get them fired up. Wherever there's a lot of cranes, you're almost gonna hear gobbling early. I don't know. They're super loud, and I think they just strike them. It's just a loud shock gobble. I've heard them. Heck, I heard them gobble almost 40 minutes before daylight because of cranes. Weird things happen.
It is interesting how they will gobble and respond to a variety of different sounds that are in the woods if they're excited or fired up.
Train whistles, semi horn, thunder, like a super low rolling thunder. It's got to be the frequency or something.
Yeah.
Let's see what else. Yelling, just like, hey, just like that. I've heard them gobble to that. It's weird. It's like a shock gobble.
Yeah.
And of course, owls and stuff like that. Oh, I've heard them gobble to a gunshot even. So yeah, it's weird. If I knew what a turkey was thinking, they'd all be in trouble.
Well, Tyler, I think this is a good amount of information. I appreciate you coming on again. And if anyone has questions or comments, I mean, we'll get this posted out on the Beast. You can definitely post questions to Tyler there, or post them to the Facebook group, the Hunting Beast Facebook group. And Tyler, I'm sure, will be more than happy to answer your questions. That concludes today's podcast episode. Please go to thehuntingbeast.com to post any discussions, questions, or comments regarding today's podcast episode.